this morning, went back to it, and ended up reviewing about, I think it was like 30 pages of the manuscript this morning. So wasn't a whole lot, not a whole lot as far as like just doing line edits goes. A lot of it was just looking at what I've done before, just seeing if sentences are making sense, and making just small corrections as I go through. As you can see on the screen, a lot of it just me kind of just reading. That's kind of what this process is at this point. Now, kind of the position where I'm at, a lot of it is just a lot of fine tuning. So it's a lot of reading. It's a lot of finding a lot of the smaller things and making those corrections. It's interesting too, because it's times like this where I find the process to be very, very manageable. It's not nearly as difficult. It's not nearly as overwhelming as it has been at other points. And you look at it and you start to realize as you go through this that it's a one day at a time process. Any project where you look at it from the outside is always, always, always ominous. If you had told me at the beginning of starting this novel here what this was going to be like, I would have been very, very overwhelmed. I probably would have been paralyzed and wouldn't have been able to start. What helped was obviously just showing up every day and just writing, just focusing on the immediate thing that needs to be done. And if you can approach these sort of things with that mentality of the one day at a time mentality, these little things will add up. The book itself is never written in a day. It's written after a culmination of days. It's written over the course of a long period of time. And when you're in the middle of it, you're never thinking about the end goal. You're never thinking basically, oh my God, I'm working on this ominous project. You're just thinking about the immediate thing you're trying to do. You're just thinking of that next thing that needs to get done. Does this section need to be written? Does this section need to be rewritten? Do I have to edit this part? Do I have to do a new beginning, a new ending? You start fixing and compartmentalizing a lot of the parts of it. And so you tend not to get so overwhelmed, especially these points, because you're focusing on just this small. And then what happens is the small obviously just adds up, and eventually you have this book written. And that tends to be how pretty much any kind of project works, is you focus on just the immediate things that need to be done. And if you can keep doing that day in and day out, eventually those will just add up. It's really simple, like really easy advice. Yet most people who start novels don't finish them, right? The majority of people who start a novel or try to write a novel never get it finished. They will never get it finished. Most adults, have at some point in their life wanted to write a novel. I think most have wanted to pen something. And how many do it, right? Very few. There's a lot of people that want to be musicians, that want to be singers, and kind of get famous that way. How many pull it off? Again, it's not about the success of just getting picked. I mean, how many people that want to write a song ever actually write a song, right? Most don't. Most that think about doing it do never start. And this whole process that's what it is. It's a funneling. It's continually weeding out sort of the people that don't have the fortitude basically to go forward with this. And the fortitude just comes from being resilient enough to tackle these immediate problems and not thinking of the bigger picture, not getting overwhelmed by the immensity of the project itself. And that's every time I get frustrated with this process, every time I start to get overwhelmed, that's always the thing that I turn back to. It's something you've seen in these videos all the time on the days where I talk about getting frustrated. It's returning to the simple and immediate thing that needs to be done, and keeping my head down and getting that finished. It's not about looking at the whole thing, getting overwhelmed and worrying about, this whole book needs to be done. I got to write a whole book. Oh my God, I got to write 120,000 words. Oh my, it's about going in and just tackling those immediate small things. That is what will, over the long term, add up. And with it, the process obviously takes longer than you would think. That's, I mean, it's true of anything, right? Like I'm surprised that I've been able to get this novel almost done basically in about a year. If I do query in January, that'll be about a year. I'm very, very surprised. These things do not ever get finished that quickly. Now, granted, I spent about 5 months of this year not working, where I had, the better part of, 4, 5, 6, 8 hour days to work on to work on this thing. So that's very, very helpful. But that was not my original plan. I had not thought things were going to go this way at all. And I'm certainly very surprised I've gotten as far as I have. It doesn't mean that, obviously, that this book will ever get picked up. It may not. But having finished this, getting this done within a year, it's not necessarily something that most people are able to do. Just, obviously, time is the biggest reason. And then you obviously have, I think, the biggest reason after time. If I gave everybody the time, the same amount of time that took me to write it, would they actually do it? Most wouldn't, because I think it's the immensity. I think it's the immensity of the project. I think people tend to get themselves psyched out very, very, very early on in this process, where they start, and with these big ideas, these big things they want to include, they want their story to have these plot twists and these turns. They want to have these characters, to have these personalities that are very realistic and aren't like the sort of stereotype ones you've seen before. But these unique personalities take time to develop on the page, and you start to go, okay, how can I show it? And then you start getting worried. Oh my God, how can I show it? How can I do this? You start going further down the rabbit hole. And it needs to be done. There's no way around it. This stuff needs to be tackled. But your mind tends to spin these things out. You go in the rabbit hole and your mind just spins these things out. And if you can refocus, if you can recenter yourself on just an immediate thing that needs to be done, you can trudge forward. And time is honestly on your side. I think in this project, I think time is on the side of everybody who starts these projects. In that, the longer you can do it, I think the clearer the picture becomes. If you can do things in small chunks, I think as you work on it, I think the idea of what you're going to do changes. I think maybe what you initially wanted to do will change. Maybe you're not as interested in some project as you become in another project or something like that. As you go through this process, I think time really tends to be the thing that pushes people forward through these things. I think our brains just tend to rework these things out in as we stretch things, over the course of weeks and months. I think our brains tend to sort of work these problems out almost kind of in the background. And then what happens is you've been grinding away at something for 3 months. You lift your head up, you look back at what you've done, you go, wow, okay, I've gotten quite a bit done, and I now have a vision. I can now kind of see where I can go. This sort of like very foggy pathway that to this goal that I was trying to figure out, it's opened up a little bit. I can kind of see through the fog. I can see kind of a clearer picture now of maybe where I can go and where I can take this. And you start moving forward through that less foggy path. And again, same thing happens. You get stuck, you get frustrated, you have to revert back to the small things and do the one step at a time mentality. And again, 3 months later, 6 months later, whatever, you look back and you go, oh wow, I got through that too. And we always forget. People always tend to forget. People tend not to be very, very good at recalling these sort of things. It's because I think, again, our brains work in such a weird way. We tend to forget a lot of these things. We tend to forget that we've gone through this exact same pattern of this sort of same cycle of frustration and confusion, and then finding something and then going with it, and then getting some sort of success, and then moving forward, and then coming to the next obstacle and the same frustration, confusion. We tend to forget, I think, how many times we've experienced that. So if you are someone that's trying to tackle this, I don't care if it's writing some of the general project, the trick is to just take it one day at a time and focus on just immediate small things you can do. Those compound, those build up, and that is where eventually, after a long amount of time, you can look back and actually have something completed. All right. But I'll be back tomorrow with this video. If you, for those of me that may be looking at the date that's stamped on here, I uploaded 2 this morning. Just basically, I got home last evening and I was so exhausted, I ended up passing out without remembering to upload the video. So you get 2 today. Writing lesson is going up tomorrow. It's the 3rd video in this month's series, so check it out. And yeah, I will be back tomorrow.